Welcome to Time Traveling Team, the podcast where we review every episode of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Tricia.
And I'm Paddy. This week we join the 6th Doctor and Peri as they begin Season 22 by facing off against some old foes in Attack of the Cybermen. I wonder who they could be. As usual, we'll be discussing the Doctor, the companions and the villains and giving our thoughts on the story as a whole.
We would also love to hear your thoughts on the story, so as always, to join the discussion, you can check out our socials at TimeTeamp, that's TimeTeamp, or you can email us at timetravelingteam@teamproductions.com. Now though, Paddy, if you would, kick off our new season with a story recap, s'il vous plaît.
Will do. Part 1. In modern London, two maintenance workers are examining the structural conditions of the sewer tunnels near the Thames River. One of them notices something odd about a nearby brick wall, but both of them are attacked by a mysterious figure. Meanwhile, on the TARDIS, the Doctor is attempting to fix the ship's long-damaged chameleon circuit. Peri asks if he's been pushing himself too much after his recent regeneration, but he gruffly says that he is perfectly fine and that she needs to understand that he is not the same as his previous incarnation. However, he calmly tells her that he will never hurt her and says that he will take her on a holiday. However, when he inputs the coordinates, the ship suffers gravitational distortion. The Doctor manages to stop the TARDIS and correct the error in his repairs. He then tells Peri that they are going to 1985 Earth and comments on her lack of gratitude after saving their lives. Peri replies by saying that she knows he is just as surprised as she is at having survived near disaster. As they continue towards Earth, the Doctor opens the external view screen to show Peri the nearby Halley's Comet, which will once again be soon visible from Earth. Peri mentions the old fable of it being associated with imminent disaster, but the Doctor brushes it off as an old wives' tale. Elsewhere in London, a group of men park outside a bank and discuss their plans to rob it. The leader of the group is Lytton, the former commander of a mercenary group employed by the Daleks that was left stranded on Earth when their recent invasion attempt failed. Lytton says that they will be doing the bank job today, but one of them, Russell, says it is earlier than they planned. Lytton orders him to go fetch a consignment of explosives and then leaves with the other two members of the group, Payne and Griffiths. They drive to an old junkyard and Lytton tells them that they will tunnel into the bank vault through the sewers. As the others prepare to go into the sewers, Lytton activates a machine in a nearby cabinet before joining them and the recently returned Russell. Russell notices Lytton bringing a gun, and he and Griffiths voice concern at this, but Lytton ignores them and says that they will follow his instructions or lose their share of the heist. They then head into the tunnels. In the TARDIS, the Doctor detects a distress signal coming from Earth, and both he and Peri comment on how unusual that is given the level of technology at the time. The Doctor says that he should go investigate, and they land in a scrapyard, the very same scrapyard that he and his granddaughter Susan first met his old companions Ian and Barbara. They leave the TARDIS, and Peri comments that the TARDIS hasn't changed appearance, but the Doctor says it is taking its time to make up its mind. They then watch as it changes into an old tea cabinet. Peri finds it funny, but the Doctor gruffly leads her off in search of the source of the distress signal. As they make their way through the nearby alleyways, Peri comments on the fact that since his regeneration, the Doctor has been very scattered, calling her by the names of his companions and enemies. The Doctor acknowledges the fact that he has been feeling odd lately, but he is interrupted when he locates the source of the signal, which is inside a locked house. The Doctor suddenly has a brainwave and leads Peri up the alleyway, not telling her anything. Unbeknownst to them, they are being followed by two policemen. He leads Peri back to the scrapyard, and they leave in the TARDIS. He tells Peri that the signal is not actually coming from the house, but is instead using it and other locations as a relay. He says that whoever is sending the signal is being very cautious, and Peri suggests that the house may be being watched to see who is coming to investigate the signal. The Doctor pilots the TARDIS to the source of the signal, which is in the junkyard Lytton was operating from. They go to investigate, and the Doctor finds the cabinet with the machine that Lytton earlier turned on. Suddenly, Peri alerts him to the presence of a policeman who has emerged with a gun from the tunnel to the sewer. The Doctor distracts the policeman before diving into the tunnel to fight him. Peri watches in concern, but is cornered by another policeman. Peri blinds him with gravel from a nearby wheelbarrow and disarms him as the Doctor emerges from the tunnel. He handcuffs the policeman to a pipe and then leads Peri into the tunnel. Meanwhile, down in the sewers, Lytton and the others make their way through the tunnels. Payne is left behind after Russell says he thinks someone is following them. The others move on, and after a short while, Payne is attacked by the mysterious figure. Lytton and the others find the same confusing stretch of tunnel where the workers disappeared, and Russell says that they are lost. Lytton says they are right where they are supposed to be, and tells Griffith to start breaking through the wall. After a while, Lytton notices someone approaching, and they watch as a Cyberman comes near them. Griffiths shoots it, but Litton pulls a gun on him and tells him to stop, and neither of them notice Russell flee down the tunnels. The mysterious wall then slides open, and more Cybermen appear. Litton gives himself up, and Griffiths screams as the Cybermen surround them. They are brought before the Cyber leader. Litton reveals that he found them after tracking the transmissions from their base to another base on the moon. He reveals that he is not from Earth and offers his services to them. He says that he brought the others as a gift to show his loyalty to the Cybermen. The Cyber leader says that his fate will be decided by the Cyber controller, who is currently on the cyber world of Telos. Elsewhere in the tunnels, the Doctor and Peri, having heard the gunshots, move towards the sound, finding Payne's body as they do so. Peri says that they should go tell the police, but the Doctor says they need to find evidence first and continues on down the tunnel. Suddenly they are ambushed by Russell, who disarms Peri and demands to know what happened to Payne. He tells him to stand by the wall so he can search them, but the Doctor disarms him and questions him while Peri holds him at gunpoint. The Doctor introduces himself and Peri and demands to know who Russell is. He reveals that he is an undercover police officer who has been sent to spy on Litton. The Doctor reveals Litton's true identity and asks why Russell is after him. Russell says that Litton is suspected of orchestrating several burglaries of top-secret electronic devices. The Doctor then says they need to stop him and leads them back to the TARDIS. Meanwhile, on Telos, a group of prisoners in a work detail attack one of their Cybermen guards, beheading it. One of them goes to retrieve the head, but the Cybermen destroy it and kill the prisoner. The other two prisoners, Bates and Stratton, continue their escape and are amazed to see none of the other prisoners trying to follow them. Bates says that without the head and a third person, they can't operate one of the Cybermen's ships so they can escape the planet. Stratton wonders why the guards aren't chasing them, and Bates points to a fortress on a hill, saying that the cyber controller knows exactly where they are. Bates then leads the reluctant Stratton towards the fortress, and they manage to ambush another Cyberman on the way. Bates removes its head and tells Stratton to put it on so they can pretend to be a guard and a prisoner in order to enter the fortress. Back on Earth in the sewers, the Doctor and Peri and Russell take cover when they see a Cyberman patrolling the tunnels. The Doctor manages to ambush it and destroys it by stabbing it with a small sonic lance. The destruction of the guard is noticed by the Cyberman base, and the Cyber leader orders that the base be sealed off and all troops and prisoners undergoing cyber conversion be put onto their ship. The Cyber leader then orders Litton to follow him, and they find the scout's body. Litton sees the sonic lance and says it looks like something the Doctor would use. The Cyber leader says that he is one of their oldest enemies and that they must find him in order to capture his TARDIS. At that moment, the Doctor and the others arrive at the TARDIS, but they are ambushed by a Cyberman. Russell manages to kill it as he tries to strangle the Doctor. He then takes its weapon, but he is killed by another Cyberman that appears from one of the interior corridors. Peri goes to help him, but suddenly the Cyber leader appears with more troops as well as Litton and Griffiths. The Cyber leader then orders Peri to be killed. Part 2. The Doctor tells the Cybermen to stop and says that he will cooperate with them if he lets Peri live. The Cyber leader says that they don't need him as they have the TARDIS, but the Doctor dashes to the control console and activates the self-destruct. The Cyber leader orders Peri to be released and promises the Doctor that he will let them live before ordering him to take them to Telos. The Doctor is then stunned to hear that the Cyber controller is still alive, believing that he had destroyed him during their last encounter on Telos. The Cyber leader then orders the Doctor and the others to be taken away. As they are led to one of the rooms, Litton reveals that the Cybermen have another time ship on Telos, which further alarms the Doctor. He asks how Litton knows about this, but he refuses to elaborate. The Doctor accuses him of being a spy and tells Peri of their last encounter. Litton assures him that he is not aiding the Cybermen, but the Doctor remains dubious. The Doctor then opens up a wall panel and starts tinkering with the wiring, saying that he is trying to bypass the navigational systems to avoid going to Telos. Confused Griffiths asks what is Telos, and Litton says it is the homeworld of the Cybermen. The Doctor corrects him, saying that it was actually home to a race called the Cryons before the Cybermen invaded. Litton says that the Cybermen invaded as they needed access to the cryon refrigeration technology so they could go into hibernation. The Doctor says it was no excuse for the genocide they committed, and Peri asks why they couldn't do it on their own planet. Litton forces the Doctor to reveal the truth, and he tells them that the Cybermen homeworld of Mondas will be destroyed in the following year during its attempted invasion of Earth, which was foiled by his first incarnation. Peri says they need to warn Earth in order to save the lives that will be lost, but Litton smugly says the Doctor is bound by the laws of time and can't interfere. Suddenly they are interrupted by a guard who comes to take Peri away and tells the Doctor to go to the console room. Once there, the Cyber leader tells the Doctor they detected a transmission coming from the TARDIS, saying that he must have done it during his earlier interference. They force him to deactivate the signal and say that they will kill him if he tries that again. Peri is then brought in, having been changed into cold weather gear, and the TARDIS then lands. Everyone leaves the TARDIS and they find themselves deep in the underground tombs of Talos. The Cyber Leader says that they have landed in the wrong place. Peri comments on the smell, and Lytton says that it is the smell of death. A confused Doctor says that Lytton knows more than he is letting on, but Lytton mysteriously says that he will have to wait. The Cyber Leader says they need to leave it immediately, but they are suddenly interrupted when a Cyberman bursts from one of the tombs and begins attacking the other ones. Lytton and Griffiths flee in the confusion, and the Doctor tells Peri to go as well, but he is recaptured when the rogue Cyberman is destroyed. Peri encounters another rogue Cyberman, but two bulb-headed, ice-covered aliens appear and kill it, taking Peri away with them. Meanwhile, Lytton and Griffiths take a break, but they are approached by another of the mysterious aliens. She introduces herself as Trest and greets Lytton, who reveals that she is one of the Cryons. He says that they acknowledged his distress signal when he was trapped on Earth. They informed him of the invasion of the Cybermen and said that they needed help to defeat them. Griffiths is outraged at the deceit and blames Lytton for Payne and Russell's death. Trest says that he would be rewarded for helping them, and she gives him a bag of diamonds. He agrees to help, asking what he needs to do, and Lytton says that they will steal the Cybermen's time ship. Trest says that Lytton needed humans as the Cryons would die on the surface due to the temperature difference. Lytton then leads him to the surface, and once there, they encounter Bates and Stratton, who are on their way to the fortress. Lytton reveals their objective given to them by Trest, and Bates agrees to help them. As they continue on, Bates reveals that he and the other prisoners have been partially cyberized, and Lytton says that the same fates awaits him and Griffiths if they fail. Meanwhile, the Doctor is placed in a storage room in the fortress, and he encounters another Cryon named Flast, who tells him that she has been prisoner for a long time. The Doctor says they need to escape, and Flast vows to help him, saying that she hates the Cybermen for what they have done to her people. The Doctor says that they're even more dangerous now that they have knowledge of time travel, but Flast reveals that the Cybermen don't actually know how the time ship works. The Doctor says that is a relief, but Flast says that they will need to be stopped because if the Cybermen do get the ship working, they intend to use it to prevent Mondas's destruction. Elsewhere, Peri thanks her rescuers, who introduces themselves as Ross and Varn. Peri says they need to go rescue the Doctor, but they say they cannot attack the fortress due to their weakness to the temperature. Peri notices their familiarity with the Doctor, and they reveal their hiring of Lytton. They tell her that they need him to steal the time ship to prevent the Cybermen leaving Talos. Peri asks why they want to keep them there, and Ross says that the Cybermen have planted explosives within the planet so that they can destroy it after they leave and study the effects. She says that the Cybermen intend to do the same to Earth and replace it with Mondas. This revelation is echoed to the Doctor by Flast, who further explains that the Cybermen intend to divert Halley's Comet to destroy Earth. The Doctor says that such an event would break the established flow of time and that the Time Lords wouldn't allow it to happen. Flast says that maybe they have been trying to prevent it, and the Doctor angrily realizes that he's been secretly manipulated to get him to Talos. Flast says that she wants the Cybermen dealt with as much as the Time Lords do, and the Doctor points out that the Cybermen only invaded Talos because Mondas was destroyed. Flast says that her people have accepted their fate and now just want to get rid of the Cybermen. She then shows him several containers of a mineral powder that she says is highly unstable in warm temperatures and could be useful against the Cybermen. The Doctor then uses some of the mineral powder to destroy the Cybermen standing guard outside. He then warns Flast that she will be killed in retribution, knowing that she cannot leave the storage room due to the temperature outside. She takes his sonic lance and says that she will use it to ignite the mineral powder and destroy the fortress after he escapes. He acknowledges her sacrifice and rushes outside of the room. Meanwhile, Lytton and the others make their way through the service tunnels in the fortress. The others climb up to the next level, but Lytton is captured and taken to the control room, where the cyber controller demands to know what he is planning. Lytton refuses to speak, and his hands are crushed before the cyber controller orders him to be taken away for cyber conversion. Elsewhere, Griffiths, Bates, and Stratton are killed when they try to access the time ship. Meanwhile, the Doctor arrives back in the TARDIS to find it under guard. He then finds Peri and the other Cryons. They tell him that they need to get the TARDIS away before the Cybermen figure out how to pilot it. The Doctor asks the Cryons to open one of the tubes so that he can access the Cybermen inside. He starts to tinker with it, saying that Cybermen will respond to any distress signal from one of their own kind. He tells them about his encounter with Flast and says that they have very little time before the fortress explodes. At that moment, Flast is brought to the control room for questioning about the Doctor's escape, but she refuses to answer and is killed by leaving her to suffer from the temperature exposure. Back at the TARDIS, the Doctor manages to lure the Cybermen out, and they are ambushed by the Cryons. The Cybermen are killed, but so are the Cryons except for Rost. He expresses his sympathies, but she tells him that time is running out and he needs to leave quickly. Peri says they need to find Lytton, revealing that he was helping the Cryons. The Doctor is stunned by this and says that he will try to rescue him. He pilots the TARDIS into the control room, and the Doctor finds Lytton being partially cyberized. The Doctor asks him why he didn't reveal his true intentions, but Lytton begs the Doctor to kill him. Suddenly the Cyber Controller and a squad of guards appear, but the Doctor manages to free Lytton, who kills the Cyber Controller whilst the Doctor kills the guards. The Doctor goes to tend to Lytton, but Peri says that he is dead. The Doctor again asks why Lytton never said anything, and Peri replies that he never gave him a chance. They quickly go back into the TARDIS and leave just before the fortress explodes as a result of the time delay fuse the flash set in the storage room. Inside the TARDIS, Peri tries to comfort the Doctor by saying that they have saved the correct flow of time, but he morosely says that he completely misjudged Lytton. End of the story. So, you may have noticed a slightly different structure to the recap, and I wonder if we'll have a reason why in the trivia section. So what have you got for us this week?
Cool. So the air date for this story was the 5th to the 12th of January 1985. Or rather, the 5th and the 12th of January 1985. The writer was someone. There is some contention over who exactly wrote this story. It was written under a pseudonym. The pseudonym in question was Paula Moore. A woman named Paula Woolsey and Eric Sword apparently worked together to write the story, with contributions from Ian Levine. However, Levine claims that he wrote the narrative, which was then developed into a script by Eric Soward. Eric denies this and affirms that he wrote the final script and the majority of the narrative, with contributions from Levine and to a minor extent from Woolsey. I cannot find any specifics about Paula Woolsey except that she and Eric used to date prior to this, and that he pulled her in to work on the project. But in the behind the sofa on the Blu-ray for this, and yes, lovely listeners, I am back to watching the behind the sofas again. It's interesting because I think it's Janet Fielding that's like, oh, did you know that this story was written by a woman? And then it cuts to Wendy Padbury, or else it was the other way around, it was Wendy first and then Janet, saying, oh, this is written by Eric Soward. So clearly, like, even among the actors, people don't know who actually wrote the story. But yeah, it's interesting that there's so many people claiming and not claiming ownership.
Yeah. I will say that it's nice to see them all fighting for actual claiming that they wrote the story, as opposed to kind of going, no, I didn't have anything to fucking do with that. That was someone else.
Yeah. The director of the story is Matthew Robinson. This is the second and final directing credit for Matthew. We previously saw his work in Resurrection of the Daleks, which maybe is no surprise to some people when we see some of the people that we saw in the story. The working title of this story had, or rather included, Return to Telos and the Cold War. Personally, I have never been a fan of the Cybermen, of the Daleks naming convention. So I would have much preferred one of those. Return to Telos, I actually quite like. But yeah,
because we've talked before about how it actually kind of gives away the surprise of what's about to happen, and a key one of that is Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Yeah. That really gets on my goat. I don't mind Genesis of the Daleks so much because you kind of know what you're getting into, whereas the other ones are like, nah, keep it.
Yeah, the idea of Resurrection of the Daleks gives it away. And in this one, Attack of the Cybermen, I think it was probably chosen because it was the first story of a new season. There had been a break since Colin's last story. We discussed last week, Twin Dilemma wasn't the most well-received story at the time, though you and I quite enjoyed it. So that was probably why. As Paddy mentioned, this was the first Doctor Who story to be produced in 2 45-minute episodes. I'm guessing, I didn't find a specific reason for this, but I'm guessing one of the reasons why is that they were already on a sort of 2-week time slot anyway. So instead of having 2 days where they had an episode each day, they just went down to 1 day and 45 minutes. But it still gets them through their production run, in the same amount of time.
Mhm.
In some markets, though, it was re-edited into 4 25-minute segments rather than the 2. So the cliffhangers would have been, I think these are kind of obvious, so I think it was kind of done on purpose. The Cybermen in the sewer.
So like when Griffith screams, is it?
Yeah, so the emergence of the Cybermen from the sewer control.
Yeah.
And then Flash revelation that the Cybermen intend to prevent Mondas's destruction. So I think like if you're watching it, those sort of do feel like natural pauses. So I think it kind of makes sense.
Mhm.
There's a couple of other noticeable things about this story. There's a lot of notables actually about the story. First, this is the first time in the show that the chameleon circuit actually fucking works. Ish. It doesn't work great. It doesn't work great, let's be honest. But it works a bit. And so this is the very first time it actually works. And I love the fact that the first time it works in Totter's Lane. It's like, it's so perfect. That's the first location where we see it actually work, which is the last location where apparently it worked properly. So I thought that was a nice sort of bookend to that.
Yeah. Mhm.
It also sees the return of Telos, as we mentioned. This is the setting of the 1967 story, The Tomb of the Cybermen, right? So way back when, with Patrick Troughton. It also brings back the cyber controller, though he has been redesigned a little bit to match with the current Cyberman design, so he fits in a bit more naturally. And so basically through this story, they're trying to reconcile Tellus's depiction as the Cybermen's homeworld in the Tomb of the Cybermen with the claim in the 10th planet that the Cybermen homeworld was Mondas. So it's trying to sort of bridge those two things. Yeah. And we can talk later on if we feel that that was effective or not, but we'll see. The story also has the return of Lytton, who you and I have repeatedly referred to as Lytton before. Last seen in, surprise, surprise, Resurrection of the Daleks. His role in the story is something where we're going to probably have a big discussion later on about the fact that he is assumed to be the bad guy. It's revealed that he's not quite the bad guy. So I think it's going to be an interesting topic for discussion.
Yeah, I have thoughts on that one. I have thoughts.
Me too. A funny thing that I found as you were going through the recap is you kept referring to it as Halley's Comet, which is what the Doctor calls it. It's Halley's Comet.
Yeah.
And so in the Behind the Sofa, Colin Baker comments on the fact that he was calling it by the wrong thing. And they sort of joke that surely someone in the BBC should have corrected it, and nobody did. So it's obviously Halley's Comet. What's interesting is obviously because this is the BBC and so they've access to the BBC catalogue of stuff, is that the background music when we see Halley's Comet is actually from a 1981 BBC documentary, The Comet is Coming, about Halley's Comet, which I thought was quite cool. It's quite a cool connection that the BBC does, reusing stuff so that you don't have to pay someone to create something new. A couple of things about the original script. So in the original script, it was meant to be that a colony of Kryons were living inside Halley's Comet, and it was Lytton's job to convince the Cybermen to use the comet as the agent of Earth's destruction in order to lure the cyber controller there, where he would then be ambushed by the Kryons. The scheme would be uncovered by the Cybermen, who would then turn against Lytton. That was kind of the original plan there. The original script also had a line, which I'm so glad did not make it to air. Whoever wants to take credit for cutting this, thank you. Because in the original script, the Doctor made a little quip upon seeing the burnt out remains of a Cyberman. And that quip was, "A blacked up Cyberman. I wonder if he was planning to audition for a minstrel show."
Ooh.
I think even in 1985, that's a bit what the fuck.
Yeah. Because if I'm correct, like that, like there is like a darkened Cyberman like going around in the background.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
No.
Going back to the chameleon circuit for a second. So why did it suddenly work? What was the driving force behind it suddenly working? As will come as a surprise to no one, it was a publicity stunt by Jonathan Turner. To draw more interest in the series, he hinted publicly that it might be a permanent development, but he never pursued the idea beyond the story because Jonathan Turner just likes to stir shit and just let it settle. For him to stir again later. Matthew Robinson was concerned about the lack of female characters because originally the named Cryons, or at least two of the named Cryons, were male. So Varn and Flast were originally male. And so Matthew was concerned that there was hardly no women in the story. So he decided that all the Cryons would just be women. We have the Cybermen and the Cryons. Again, in the behind the sofa, Sylvester McCoy, who is also doing it, thought that they were cyber ladies. Somebody hadn't seen the episode before.
Yeah, no, because this is a thing, right? That I vividly remember this when UK TV Gold was the thing. They did a Doctor Who at 40 celebration, so they picked kind of big stories from, and they had a promo package which was this, Pyramids of Mars, Spearhead from Space, and Caves of Androzani, but it was done to Robot Rock by Daft Punk. And I vividly remember the scene where Flast emerges from behind as Robot Rock is playing it. So I was kind of going like, yeah, like are they like some sort of weird icy robots?
No.
So I don't blame Sylvester at all for getting that fucking confused.
Again, another topic we'll talk about later on, I've no doubt, is the violence in the story. Yes. This earned it a mature 15 plus rating in Australia for low level violence. So basically it's a bit more than 12, so whatever.
I'd say Mary Whitehouse was wetting herself over this.
Oh yeah. And we'll talk about that a bit more later on. Though we're not going to talk about him in the cast. We're not going to talk about a lot of people in the cast actually for this, and we'll explain why as we go through. One person I do want to mention is that we get the only on-screen appearance in Doctor Who of Terry Malloy playing someone other than Davros. Because he plays Russell.
All right.
Yeah, so this is his only appearance on screen where he's playing someone other than Davros. And it's so lovely because everyone on the behind the sofa segment were all like, oh look, it's Terry Malloy. Oh, he looks so weird. It's like seeing Terry as Terry. And in fairness, I think he did a really good job. I think he did really well. But yeah, so the main cast that we're going to be talking about specifically are going to be Lytton and Griffiths. So Lytton is once again played by Morris Colburn. As Paddy mentioned in the summary, we previously saw Morris in Resurrection of the Daleks. And Griffiths is played by Brian Glover. It is the only Doctor Who acting credit for Brian. Brian is a former wrestler, and his non-Who credits include Cass, An American Werewolf in London, and weirdly, given the book that Paddy read most recently, Alien 3. It's just a weird coincidence that Paddy was reading an Alien 3 novel and then he watched this, and there he is.
Yep, it's the novelization of the initial first draft script pitch, which is wildly different than what we got. Personally speaking, I prefer what we got. Also, it won't be the first time Alien 3 is mentioned in the trivia spot, because that movie is flooded with a good few people that are going to appear in Doctor Who. Also, Brian Glover also appeared in Porridge as Mr. Hesla, one of the prisoners. Love that character. I love that show as well.
Brian sadly passed away in 1997.
So, thank you very much for trivia. It's always fun. It's always interesting. And you definitely raised up a couple of points there that were on my let's talk about this agenda when we got to the characters. So, coming to the character discussion now, and as Trish kind of alluded to, we're a bit light this week. But the ones that we're going to be talking about are the Doctor and Peri. Prominent characters, I have Lytton and Griffiths, and then the Cryons.
Mhm.
And then the villains are the Cybermen.
Yes.
Surprise, surprise. Other characters like Russell and Bates and Stratton, they're there, but they don't really contribute a whole lot to kind of major impact points in the story, nor are they properly fleshed out. So there's not a whole lot of kind of discussion point you could kind of have with them realistically.
Yeah, I mean,
Bates at a push, but not much, I would say.
yeah, and even Russell, like, Russell's interesting, but his plotline doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, like I actually thought he got knocked out at the end of episode 1. No, apparently he's dead.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So you did the socials.
I did.
You get to go first.
I do. Okay. The Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Brash.
Mm-hmm.
Arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
Morally complex.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that throughout the story, he sort of moves from being overconfident to an almost like, how dare you question me? I'm the Doctor, da-da-da-da, kind of way. To also having genuine concern for Peri, having genuine concern for the timeline, for not even just disrupting time, but what would happen to Earth, but also a genuine awareness of the wider consequences of his actions, not just in relation to Mondas and what happened on Tellus previously, but in relation to how he treats Lytton. And I think it really showcases how different this Doctor is, especially from the Fifth Doctor, but actually from a lot of them, do you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've seen in a singular story the other Doctors have to contest with quite so much in terms of, obviously he's still fresh off a regeneration.
Mm-hmm.
There's this sort of erratic nature. He's calling Peri every name under the sun other than her own. There's still all of that. Most of the other Doctors really settled after their first episode, and he hasn't yet, as in the Doctor hasn't mentally settled yet. We have him facing off against the bad guys, which is the Cybermen, but also someone who, in the Doctor's mind, escaped justice previously in the form of Lytton. But then he's also facing up with the fact that, like, the Cybermen could undo something he did previously. What he did previously had ramifications for the Cryons, because if he hadn't propelled Mondas into his son, then, you know, the Cybermen never would have gone to Tellus in the first place. You know, so that never would have happened, and the Cryons wouldn't have been destroyed. So there's a whole lot of ramifications and angst and everything else, on top of his more aggressive streak, which I actually find really complex. I think I was concerned at the beginning with how, well, not right at the beginning, but like when the sort of quote unquote policeman attacked them, and he just goes full force. He just jumps into that hole and apparently beats the crap out of your man, and then comes back up. The fact that he keeps a gun, the fact that he encourages Peri to use a gun as well. There was a lot of pushback from in certain quarters around the Doctor actually killing Cybermen himself, as opposed to outthinking them. In my mind, I think that's an unfair pedestal to have the Doctor on. In a life or death situation, you do what you have to do.
Plus, other doctors have done it as well, and there's been no, tisk tisk. I think it's part of it's part of the wider thing of Colin being unfairly maligned.
Mm.
Because he's held to a different standard or it's like he's treated in a different standard because his persona didn't match up quite to exactly to what came before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think, the one area where I question if the Doctor went too far is when the quote-unquote policeman first attacked them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, other than the fact you've got British policemen pulling guns with silencers, which is odd, he doesn't try to talk to them at all, really. He doesn't ask for proof of ID. He doesn't ask what the police are doing this. And he immediately goes to attacking them and then chaining them up, which is a bit visceral for the Doctor. So something we're not really used to. I think as well his treatment of Peri is very interesting because we do still have a bit of that hangover from last story. A bit of him sort of snapping at her and making a couple of comments. But I think, and this is going to sound very weird because again, I do want to reiterate that last week we both agreed that Peri had every right to say, fuck you, I'm going home, you're an asshole, I don't care if you've just regenerated, you don't get to treat me like shit. But in this one, while sometimes he does, the way he speaks to her, is he talks down to her and stuff like that in certain cases, and he's a bit aggressive with her. He does also genuinely care for her, and when she makes a comment that gives him a good idea, you can see the connection building there. Where he's like, "You're brilliant. This is amazing. Yeah. You had such a fantastic idea. Oh my god, thank you." As opposed to saying, I just had an amazing idea. What if we did this? So he actually gave her the credit for the idea that she doesn't know that he has had.
There's a nice little kind of flowy back and forth between them, like a vaudeville routine type thing.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll discuss the violence and aggressive nature more in the overall, but for me so far, it kind of works. How about you?
And I just before we move on, so you kind of focused a lot on I would say the first half of the story. Do you have any kind of comments towards the latter half, or you just kind of feel like you're going to be repeating yourself?
The latter half, particularly in reference to Lytton, or how the Doctor deals with the crayons and stuff. Because I think, in terms of how he deals with the crayons and things, and like the ramifications of, oh my god, they're going to undo what I did, or oh my god, my actions, there isn't for me a whole lot to talk about with that. It's very Doctor done well. Like Colin does an amazing job. I don't think there is anything new or meaty in that part specifically.
Okay.
I think my big call out was the combination of all of it. I thought was really interesting. On the Lytton piece, I want to talk about that more, but when we get to Lytton.
Yeah, no problem at all. Okay, so for me, so far, 2 for 2 for Colin in terms of an engaging performance. As you say, like he's really just slotted into last week you kind of said like he gets it, he understands it. Here, I think that he has gone beyond that, and it just feels like he just feels like a natural fit. And to some of your points there as well about kind of still being in like there's still a bit of that post-regenerative that he's still a bit confused. So like there are like one or two, so there's obviously travel between Twin Dilemma and now. There's obviously a small bit there going, because like she says like the last couple of days you've been acting a bit oddly, calling me like this, that and the other. And he even acknowledges himself like that. He's like, I still don't know if I'm feeling quite right. And like, I suppose the only time that happens in the story where he calls her by the wrong name is when he calls her Susan. But that's when he actually recognizes the fucking scrapyard. So like, that's an understandable fucking, because I'm pretty sure like any of the other doctors would have done it. there's some great science moments here. Like like the detective work to try and relocate the signal, them tinkering with the sonic lens to kind of like try and futz with the navigational circuit and jury rigging a Cyberman corpse essentially to lure them out. But those moments are there, but I think, as you said, like it's the action moments. And there's something about Colin's ability. It flows well because, like, we've seen other doctors be very kind of, with the exception of Troughton, other doctors have that kind of physical nature to them. And Bill did it kind of more comedic, I would say, than Life or Death Struggle. Like, there was one Life or Death Struggle that I can think of, that was the rescue. But that's not the main focus. John's, Danger Mouse, like 70s British kung fuism is its own thing. And Tom had his kind of bohemian fencing matches every now and again. And I would kind of, I'd push back a small bit on like the aggressive nature of the Doctor, because bringing up John got fairly fucking let's go fist first before proper. If he sees someone pull a gun on him, it's like, the stupid shouting and like the Aikido and whatever. So Colin's coming back into a guy that's actually aiming the gun at Peri more so than him. It's the fact that he's aiming the gun at Peri is the initial issue. Because so I kind of have a bit of it then. Him carrying a gun, yeah, that's a bit of a strange one. Because while we've never seen the Doctor be adverse to using firearms, actually carrying one on his person for an extended period of time, not really the Doctor style. I echo Edward, like, I love his interactions with Peri in this, because yes, there's the points where he's like, he calls her an ungrateful wretch in that sort of like touching, scolding manner. Very first, there's lots of elements of 1 and 4 in this performance, but he puts his own spin on it. And like, that's a one moment. That's a first Doctor moment. But the bit there where he promises her that he would never hurt her, and he, like, to some it might seem as very patronizing when he kind of bops her on the nose. I kind of find it cute, and like, I think it's like indicative, like, of it. The bond is growing, the relationship is growing, and like, it's not a pat on the head. It's just the sort of kind of boop.
I have a quick comment about that, because I agree with you. I saw that in a sort of whole heart mentality of like, I'll never hurt you, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the audience now, where we live in the land of where you can watch the episodes back to back,
yeah,
is sort of like, fucker, you hurt her quite badly last week.
yeah.
So I think people who sort of see that as patronizing are probably looking at it through the lens of Twin Dilemma was last week, not Twin Dilemma was 2 months ago or however many months ago in terms of filming, and time has progressed.
Yeah. And like, that moment feels very Tom and Sarah Jane to me, very Ford and Sarah Jane. The other big connection point the Doctor has is with Flast in the room, because like, she represents the Cryon people to him, and he's apologetic, he's regretting his actions, but then there's the breakout, and just as they're about to break out, he realizes, you can't leave, because if you do, you're going to die. And he's torn between stopping, like, doing what needs to be done to stop things, but also abandoning Flask to her fate, because he knows that she will suffer the minute that he's detected to be gone. And there is that moment where he is torn, which is great, because that's that nice little Doctor moment. And she resigns herself to her fate, kind of going, look, I will take them out with me. You need to leave. And the way that he acknowledges the sacrifice, it's very, I'm sorry type thing. So I thought it was a nice moment. And even at the end, like when the Cybermen and most of the Cryons wipe each other out, you do feel like, again, it's like that, why did it have to come to this? And Ross just tells him, look, we'll grieve when we have time. You need to leave now.
Mm.
It's not anger. Like, I'll talk more about that when we get down to that side of thing. But it's like, that is the type of emotion and the type of gut punch you wanted to feel at the end of Warriors of the Deep.
Yeah.
Where two sides wipe each other. That's like, I was going, that's what that was trying to do. In relation to Lytton, which we'll talk about more later on, I don't think the Doctor should beat himself up as much as he does.
Mm.
But we'll talk more about that later on. Overall, though, I really enjoyed the Doctor in this one. As you said, complex, brash, arrogant. And look, that, as I keep saying, that way by design, but he's not an absolute asshole in this. He's not a horrible monster. There's genuine concern for Peri. There's genuine concern for the people that are affected by his actions. There's righteous fury. There's bravado. There's sarcasm. There's a slight little bit of unhinged, where it's just like, Peri, shoot him. It's like, what? Even when I'm kind of going like, what the fuck? Like, I'm right there with you, Peri. But no, like, seriously, very happy watching this one. Very happy watching the Doctor performance in this one.
I agree.
So now, Peripagulium.
Speaking of Peri, has Trish gotten over her accent? No. Will Trish ever get over her accent? No, I don't think it will. I just have to resign myself to that particular fate. I think Peri in this story does quite a good job of being the audience's emotional anchor.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Doctor can be a bit fucking all over the spectrum, in terms of aggression versus, caring and compassion versus whatever. And, more so in the case of, like, in his interactions with her, he's still a bit, as far as Peri's aware, he's still a bit sort of up and down. Again, at one point he called her Jamie, apparently, in the last couple of days. She's like, the book. Yeah. But particularly when you have, because, like, obviously you and I have watched all of the stories to date, but a lot of the fans watching it may not have,
Yeah.
I imagine a majority of them would probably remember who Lytton is.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe not. I mean,
no.
Tegan left a while back, in terms of production time. Mondas, Telos, what the fuck are those? Unless you were a child when they first aired. Like, children watching it when it aired wouldn't have a fucking clue what those things are.
And that was a thing that I saw, that, like, negative reviews for this story said that, it's too much of a reliance on the lore of the show. And I'm like, I have thoughts on that thing, but go continue.
Yeah. So I think for the audience, Peri is very important in this because she knows fucking none of that. She knows absolutely none of that. Lytton wasn't a prior villain for her. The Cybermen weren't a prior villain for her. So she's going in purely blind. So I think in that context, I think Peri does very, very well as the audience insert.
Mm-hmm.
She's asking the right questions. She's having pretty much the most appropriate reactions. She's confused as hell, same as a lot of the audience would be. I think she works very well. I think her interactions with the Doctor are very, they're very realistic, and I think she's still being incredibly patient. God bless her. Given what happened in the Twin Dilemma, given the fact that he's been calling her the wrong name for days at this point, given the fact that he's still, he clearly hasn't been violent to her since. But clearly his behavior is still erratic. So in terms of, like, super confident and then maybe a bit doubting and then, like, I know exactly what I'm doing and I don't know what I'm doing and this kind of stuff. I think she is still being very fucking patient. God bless her. She's trying so hard. So I think that's good. And I think her still calling him on that shit is important
Mhm.
because it shows that Eric Sauer in particular hasn't forgotten the way they introduced this character.
Yeah.
And their relationship is progressing quite naturally
Mhm.
from that to now versus, say, in Peter's era or even a little bit towards the end of Tom's era, where from one story to the next, the behavior and the treatment of a character is kind of forgotten and reset and ignored. You know, here it's their relationship is growing from what happened in Twin Dilemma and continuing to grow onwards, which I think is great. Peri's also very brave in this story. Again, I think if I remember correctly, doesn't she step in front of the doctor when the police draw a weapon, or if she tries to draw attention away from him at one point?
Mhm. Mhm.
She does sort of take the quote unquote policeman's weapon and, immediately turns it on him, which again,
Yeah.
ask for ID. Um, but like, while she is, she does have her screamy moments, it's when she's suddenly attacked by random people she doesn't know and like she doesn't
Mhm.
recognize. Or when the doctor gets dragged off or whatever. Um, but she's very brave, and the way she shows compassion and immediately adapts to the Creons, I think, is really good. Like,
Mhm.
she was clearly a bit freaked out, and not gonna lie, they're super fucking creepy.
They es- especially the way they kind of keep pawing at people.
Yeah, they're super creepy. Um, but she doesn't see that. She sees it as she hears their story and she feels for them and she wants to help them, even though she doesn't think she can. She's like, I don't know how to fly the TARDIS. Like, I've never done it before.
Mhm.
But that's not stopping her from trying. It's not stopping her
No.
from going with them. And I think in that sense, I think she did very, very well. I think her and Russell, we only got a little bit of them interacting with each other, but I like the fact that like they very quickly started bouncing off each other once they got on the same page. Again, it didn't last very long because as soon as they got off the TARDIS, it changed. But they bounced off each other quite easily, which I thought was quite good. The one thing that I disagree with Perry on, I think you and I might be on the same page on this. I'm very curious when we get to Lytton and we discuss this. Is I think she's a bit harsh on the Doctor when
Yeah.
he's like, "Why didn't he tell me? Because you never gave him a chance." I disagree, Perry. Like,
Yeah.
however, Perry wasn't there for the fucking shit show.
Yeah.
And I don't mean shit shows in the episode is bad, but shit shows in terms of like what happened was horrific of Resurrection of the Daleks. Like,
Mhm.
she wasn't there for that. She doesn't know what everyone went through. She doesn't know what Tegan had to go through. She doesn't know any of that. So I think it's understandable that she would make that statement, but I disagree with her
Mhm.
on the statement being necessary. How about you?
Yeah. So I suppose circling backwards, I completely agree with you on that point. That it is a very unfair call out for her to make in that regards because she wasn't there. She didn't see the stuff that the Doctor saw Lytton do and knew, and also the stuff that he knows Lytton did. So it's very hard. Also, jumping forward a small bit, he had plenty of fucking opportunities to tell the Doctor. Absolutely plenty of opportunities. But yeah, going in reverse order. Peri is absolutely the emotional anchor point for the audience in this story because she's still very much in that caring nursing type role where she's like, you're pushing yourself too much because no, there is possibly a still small element of me kind of going, oh, maybe he might revert to old personality and new body, but he does kind of say that this is me. Like this person, bells and whistles, flaws, the whole lot, but this is me. I think she is doing her best to get to wrap her head around that, while at the same time still being concerned for, like, you need to calm down, you need to rest. So yeah, I like that. She's a bit of a reluctant badass in this, because, like, the bit where the first cop has, or the second cop has her dead to rights, and she, like, just throws gravel in his eye, disarms him, and then she's like, I'll fucking shoot you, like, I can't miss it this ain't. But I think the weird thing is, I'm wondering, why did she do it? When they go down to the tunnels, she takes the silencer off the gun.
I don't know why.
No, but like, because I think it's a thing, like, where, like, silence compressing weapons actually affect the accuracy of, especially small firearms. So she's like, are you taking up because you know that it's pointless, or is it just because you can't fit it into your fucking hot pants?
I think it's because she can't fit it in her pocket.
Yeah. So yeah, Peri goes around for half of this episode in hot pants, which will be a recurrent theme throughout her run. But yeah, so I thought that was kind of funny. Also, the bit where, like, the reprise of episode 2, where, like, the doctor said, like, wait, let's discuss this, and she's like, I agree, as, like, all Cybermen are, like, are pointing their guns at her. Wonderful comedic timing on that one. But also, to your point, like, her interactions with the crayons are, yeah, like, she's not, like, she's initially startled by the fact that, like, who are these strange fuckers that are just taking me away with them? But then she's, like, very in their call, and reminds me of Barbara and the Thals, like, in this sort of, like, we need to help them, so there's, yeah, like, it's Peri's journey so far, I think, has been really well done. And, like, this is like, across the, what is it, the 4 stories that we've seen now, where she has served different functions in each story and showcased different parts of herself in each story. And none of them have been particularly, like, regressive or bad. So, like, Peri is on a really good streak at the moment in terms of, like, fully fleshed out, interesting characters in terms of companions.
I realize I'm on mute. I'd agree with you. Sorry. I was like, I'd agree. Why is he still talking? I would agree. He's still talking. I would agree. I was on mute. Yeah. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that.
Cool. So now we move on to the prominent characters, and we have 2 individuals and a group. So we have Lytton, Griffiths, and the Cryons. So what way do you want to do this?
Let's do Griffiths, the Cryons, and then Lytton. I think Lytton is the one that we probably have the most to talk about.
Yep.
So Griffiths is... Okay. I was watching the episode. You had warned me that he was going to be in it. And I was like, okay. And we get the car scene. I'm like, cool. Not him, not him, not him. And oh my god, he sounds exactly the same as your man from Alien 3. And I could not get it out of my head. I was like, holy shit.
This is rumor control.
I was expecting to have a little squeezy ball thing. Yeah. I really like Griffiths. I like him because he's a necessary aspect of comic relief. But not in a sort of stupid way. If that makes sense. So he's clearly been part of Lytton's group for a while, however long Lytton has been doing what he's doing. But he's also like, the other guy, Payne, just takes the piss out of him constantly. So it's like, oh, we're not going to go in. Like, Lytton says, like, what do you think we're going to break into the bank wearing nylon? Meaning, like, over their faces to disguise them. And Payne just goes, oh, Griffiths is allergic to nylon. And Griffiths here looks at him going, stop, that was a private conversation. What are you doing? And then later on, Griffith sort of gives out that they have to walk through the tunnels, and he's like, in these shoes. And again, Payne's like, oh, are you allergic to your shoes? He's like, no, they're just too small. Like off petal. Or like when he starts hammering away at the wall, and Lytton and Russell are having their little tete-a-tete, as it were. And he's like, is anyone going to come and help? And they're both like, no. He's like, for fuck's sake, why am I doing this? And like, for the rest of the story, he is so out of his depth.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know? Like, when they meet the Cybermen, he's like, what the fuck is this? I thought you said you were from... Oh my god, where did he say he was from?
Hey, I thought you said you were from Fulham.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what you're thinking in this moment. Yeah. Your Matt said he was from Fulham. And even like when he meets the Cryans later on, and I love the fact that like, I think he's also a really good sort of audience insert, because he doesn't trust the Cryans at all. He's like, what the fuck is this? And like, it's totally understandable. They're new to us as well. And we're like, what the fuck is this? Are they female Cybermen? Who knows, right? So I love his reaction to them, and how he's just like, okay, what am I doing? So I'm your bodyguard. So basically nothing has changed from what they did before. And I just think, I don't know, I just find his whole character really interesting. And I feel really bad for him at the end, because, I mean, you could argue he's a bad guy because he's a bank robber.
Mm-hmm.
But he is so far out of his depth, and he didn't ask for any of this. Do you know? So the fact that like he gets, shot down by the Cybermen is like, it's actually really sad, because it's like, he is us in a way. Do you know, like, Peri is one version of the audience, and then I sort of get the feeling that Griffiths is like the casual observer, if that makes sense. It's like the layman who's never seen the show before and who can't keep up and so gets shot in the back. So yeah, I think the performance was great. I think he was a really fun character. I think he was a necessary character to add a bit of levity and a bit of human weakness to the story, because Peri is busy being a badass. She can't be human weakness. So I think it's nice that we have Griffiths sort of fitting that mold. As such. How about you?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of glad like that you kind of share a lot of my opinions about him. So yeah, like there is that comedic element of him where it's like, or you're allergic to nylon, the whole thing of my shoes. When he starts mocking the Cybermen, like he's like, he kind of tries to mock their voice, and then he ends up getting his head squeezed as a fucking Brian Glover is a great facial actor. He's really good.
He really is.
Also, I love the fact that in terms of like, he has no vocal range whatsoever. Character-wise, he's actually very good, but the man has no vocal range. You're like going, oh yeah, that's Brian Glover type scenario, because he's the exact same fucking tone of voice in everything that I've ever seen him in. There are more, like, he is a very interesting character because, as you say, he's like an alternate insert, and he kind of reminds me of the oh, what a wonderful adventure immersion type thing that you have, like that is the fans kind of thing, where like, when you watch something where everyday Joe Soap is plucked out of their life and brought into like the realm of fantasy or the realm of sci-fi, like kind of like sort of like a Starcade, or like brought into the door of D&D or whatever, and it's like that, and it's like this sort of like, oh yeah, I'm here for the adventure. Like, I like to see a character who's like going, where's the magic door to read the fuck back because I don't want to be here scenario. And it's like, that's a realistic thing. Not everyone's going to dive in head first into the fucking grand adventure. Like not quite like, say, Lawrence Scarman from Pyramids, who's like going, this is like, somebody from H.G. Wells or whatever. It's like, no, this is the kind of guy that's like going, no, bring me back to fucking London. Like I'll rob a chip shop or something like that, and just put me back to fucking normality. And you see that reflected in his softer tone moments when the four of them are in the TARDIS, when he's like, can someone please tell, like, he drops the hard man persona. And when he's not being kind of fucking mocked and belittled by Lytton. He's just a normal guy. He's like, can someone please just tell me what's going on? And like, because he's at his angriest or most muscle-headed when Lytton makes a disparaging comment. He goes like, that sounds like another insult, Mr. Lytton, like that type of thing. It's like, you immediately think, oh, he's just a fucking meathead, but it's like, no, he's a normal guy. A criminal, yes, absolutely. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he's a normal person thrown into a scenario that he knows nothing about. And then when he meets the Cryons, he's like, I fully agree, like empathize with him on Lytton's whole thing of which is like, so fucking men are dead because you lied to us. And it's like, oh, would you have come if I told the truth? No. And he shouldn't be fucking belittled or anything for that. But like the fact that you got other guys killed because you lied to them about it is like, go stop acting all fucking high and mighty. And I think at the end, his death is just so fucking fast and like just ignoble that it actually does kind of hit you a bit. Because how it happens is that Bates is electrocuted when he tries to open a door, and the door opens then and there's Cybermen behind it, and Griffiths and Stratton try to run, and they're just gunned down. And in a way, it is kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah. Like, there's something about Griffiths that this is going to sound super weird, but again, we have to think about watching this in a modern day and watching this, in March of 20... No, but as I'm watching it now, March of 2025, right? Because I'm going to make a comparison that, given the way I've described Griffiths, is going to make people kind of go, what the fuck is she on about? But I have a point. Griffiths reminds me of someone who could very easily become like Kingpin in Daredevil, particularly in Daredevil season 1, where he has sort of like the rough sort of accent or whatever, but he's relatively gentle. Do you know what I mean? But every time he's like, that sounds like an insult, Mr. Lytton, and you're insulting me again, Mr. Lytton, it kind of does give a bit of underlying, which I love, because it means that he's complex, of he's the guy that got bullied too much on the playground and beat the living shit out of the person who finally broke the camel's back. So I think that's why every time he says that to Lytton, I'm like, he's gonna snap. He's gonna fucking snap. And he doesn't get the opportunity to snap because that doesn't happen. But you can tell that there's sort of like, there's only so far you can push him before he becomes, the actual muscle man and whatever. So I imagine that like the name he has for himself probably comes a little bit from people pushing him too far and him lashing out in response. And so in that way, and like, I don't know, maybe I'm overseeing it, because again, I was watching like recaps of Daredevil recently and whatever. But I'm like, he was really restrained, and I think Lytton is kind of lucky that he stayed that way.
Yeah.
Now, not that he's going to beat someone in with a car door or something, do you know?
Yeah.
But maybe with enough snide comments.
Yeah. Like I put him in the same category as your man Harker from Horror Fang Rock, the guy that just is in the wrong place, got caught up in a bad deal, and then died for it.
Yeah.
Cool. So now we have the Cryons.
The Cryons. So I find the Cryons really interesting because their objectives are ostensibly pure, which is they don't want the Cybermen to become any more powerful than they already are, even if that means the death of all the Cryons. They're like, whatever. However, the way they go about it is a bit weird. It took me a while to get on board with them, because I was like, are they using Lytton, or do they generally, is this a genuine partnership? I don't really know. I think ultimately it was a genuine partnership, but it wasn't until the Doctor really connected with, I forgot her name, but the leader of the Crayons.
Flast.
Is it until those two really connected that I was like, okay. And for a second, I thought that maybe she had a different idea to the Crayons that Peri was with and the Crayons that Lytton had met, because she seemed very concerned and very aware of limitations and conscious of like the bigger goal, which is to not destroy the laws of time or whatever. Whereas initially the others, I was like, oh no, they're trying to take over, they're working behind her back or whatever. No, that wasn't the case at all. That was me massively overreaching, for a reason I'll come to later on. We'll talk about Lytton. I think ultimately I find them really interesting because of the fact that, like, you know, Flass says it herself, they resigned themselves to their fates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this story takes place, the time component of this is a bit confusing, but this story takes place ostensibly after Tomb of the Cybermen.
Yes.
Quite a bit after Tomb of the Cybermen. And by the time we got to Tomb of the Cybermen, the Koreans were already gone.
Mm-hmm.
So their people have been gone for a long time, and they have had time to come to terms with that. And they're like, our people can never come back, because the cost it would take for them to come back is something that is unimaginable. We can't let the Cybermen go through time and change things willy-nilly. We can't have that. And if that means that the rest of us have to go too, then so be it. So I think they were really interesting, but I found their mysteriousness to be a bit too mysterious.
Yeah.
I needed a bit more of a, like, sort of, you know, hey dummy, this is actually what they're doing. A bit earlier in the story. I think the biology thing is also interesting, like that they can't go above 0 degrees or their blood will boil, because the layout of that complex is very strange, because, like, Flask can't leave the freezer that she's in.
Mm-hmm.
But how did she get there in the first place? And the others are only a few more floors down, and apparently they're fine.
Well, so the cyber control is above ground, which is where Flast is locked. Like, so she's locked in a refrigeration unit in the above ground sections, whereas the others are in the tombs way down in the ice.
Yeah, I think it's because when the Doctor escapes, we don't really get a sense of distance.
Yeah.
And all the corridors look the same.
Yeah. So, but I think the big problem is that, like, he had to go down, but all we do is see him run straight.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
So,
and again, it doesn't answer my question of how did she get into the freezer in the first place?
Well, we know that it's not Instadet, so it could very well possibly have been that she was dragged up and fucking thrown in quickly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I think they're interesting. I would have liked to have seen more of them. The ending here is fairly definitive for them. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think we're going to see them again. And I kind of wish we did, because I think they are interesting. They were just, like I said, they were too mysterious for me at the beginning.
So that actually raises a question, which is, how do you think the 2 45-minute format worked for this story?
I think it worked really well for the story. I'll get to that more in my overall, but I think it worked quite well for this.
No, yeah, because just when you were saying, like, that you would like to have seen the guys fleshed out a small bit more, do you, like?
Oh no, I mean fleshed out as in, like, more stories with them as a species.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. Cool. So I agree that there's something very noble about a race that resigns itself to its fate in order to save another. You know, it's kind of, it's not exactly quite the same, but it just reminds me of, like, the last march of the Ents. Like, we're going to our deaths, like we're dying out as it is anyway. So, but we are going to just go to our deaths to do the right thing. They kind of remind me of the Monoptera from the Web Planet in the way that they move and they speak, and it's like, you're good guys. Why the fuck do you sound and act so creepy? Because it's like, Peri, hi, and it's like, okay, it's kind of weird, and then like there's like the constant pawing at people, and it's just like, okay, stop it.
I think they said in the behind the stuff. I think it was your one who played Fast actually came up with all of that.
Oh,
and she trained the others on what to do. Because they wanted it to be very feminine and ethereal. Yeah. So hence the whole thing with the hands and stuff like that.
I kind of wonder, like, in the sense, like, they're all played by female actresses, but like their look is kind of androgynous because like they sound and their movements are female, yet they've all got fucking handlebar and mutton chop mustaches made of ice. So like it's weird, you know. It's like,
are you being sexist saying that only men can have facial hair?
No, I'm not being sexist in that regards whatsoever, because women can also have it. But I was just, it was a curiosity thing on my part to kind of go, are they sort of an androgynous-based society because of the vocals more so than anything?
My thing of it is, and I now can't bring them to mind, so I may have to Google a picture. I don't think that's hair.
Yeah, like it's because it's frost. Like it just has the appearance of, because it's all on their.
Yeah, but I don't think that's hair.
Yeah. No, it's ice particles. It's ice particles. Yeah, sorry, it's just.
Yeah, but I think it's part of them, but I don't think it's decorative.
Yeah. No, like I think it's a skin thing. Like I think it's actually part of their biology.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no, women can have facial hair because there are some good-looking women out there that have facial hair. But anyway, moving off. As I said, they're a very tragic species, but they're noble, and they're also again very brave. Like Flass, absolutely, with her self-sacrifice is amazing. I love her interaction with the Doctor because again, it's you need to do what's right for the universe, not just what you think is right for us. And willingly sacrifices herself. And Rost, as well, as the last survivor of the squad in the shootout, is like, we'll have our time to grieve. You need to go, otherwise things will get much worse. So it is it's sad because she doesn't allow herself to have the time to actually grieve the loss of her friends. You know? And as far as we know, there's very few of them left. So like each one that dies is that further kind of lasted he can survive for, you know. And I agree. I would like to see them come back at some point. Or I would like to see if there's expanded stories out there with the Minute, because they added something to this story that without them, I don't think the story would have worked half as well as it did.
I agree.
So, Lytton.
If there was a character in Doctor who I think... Okay, if there's a list of characters, not species, individual characters in Doctor who I would say don't deserve a redemption arc, Lytton was quite high up on my list. I think the story was very complex. I think the story worked very well. Slight giveaway of what way come my overall. I do not think Lytton earned a redemption arc. The way they present it is that after the sheer fuckery of Resurrection of the Daleks, which he led and orchestrated a vast majority of, let's not forget, that suddenly he decided to send out a distress signal. Oh, someone come help me, come save me. And he connected with the Creons. They heard his story, he heard their story. And he was like, fuck yeah, I'll take down the Cybermen and I don't believe it. I don't believe the Lytton that we saw previously would do this. Now, I know there's a passage of time and people can change, but I was waiting for him to stab the Creons in the back. And maybe that means I'm just like the Doctor and I didn't give him the benefit of the doubt. He doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. Which is why I think I agree with what you said earlier, that the Doctor is very hard on himself and Peri is relatively hard on him for no reason. Like, your man never once pulled the Doctor aside and said, hey, look, I know we have a history, but this is what I'm trying to do. He was acting the same way he acted in Resurrection of the Daleks. He was backstabbing and deceiving and lying and manipulating in the exact same way. And maybe you could say, well, maybe he doesn't trust the Doctor to help him or to help the Creons or whatever. But I'm like, no, it was fun and interesting to watch, but I think completely undeserved. Like, it'd be like giving Davros a redemption arc. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, it's totally, in my mind, he doesn't deserve it. He does not deserve it. And I think the episode plays out very well. I mean, once I sort of got over the fact that, okay, this is definitely what they're doing with this character, like, when the Cybermen torture him, and like, that's a really visceral scene, because they essentially break his bones and like break the skin of his arms. Like, there's blood all over his hands. So although we can't see it, I imagine there's like bones popping out or something in his hands. And they start converting him into a Cyberman. And that's horrific and that's horrendous. And you obviously wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy. And there, I think you're like, do you know what? He remains defiant. He doesn't sell anyone out. He could very easily have sold himself out, which is great. But part of me is like, I don't like that I'm enjoying the fact that he's being so defiant against the Cyberman, because I think he's an asshole. And, you know, it's that thing of, he's doing a good thing. I don't like that he's doing a good thing because I hate him and I want to continue to hate him. And I'm aware that's my failing as a human being. Sue me. I don't care. His death is tragic. His death is horrible. But I'm also like, you're also the fucker who made Tegan watch as you killed a random fisherman halfway down the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Or as your men killed a fisherman, whatever it was, halfway down the beach. I'm like, no, I don't get how he went from Resurrection of the Daleks dickhead to I'm going to help save or I'm just going to help this tiny species, which ultimately means I'm saving Earth. I don't see the connect. It's not explained well, other than I got sad and lonely, and so I sent out a signal for someone to come and save me. Like, it makes no sense. How about you?
Yeah, like, so, like, I'm going to say something now, right? And I want to know what your agreement on it. But there are times in this story, kind of sexy looking.
I would agree.
Yeah. Just like, it's like, there's almost like a Bond level quality.
He's very charismatic. He is very charismatic.
Very charismatic. It's like, oh, as I said, it's like a fucking dark Bond type thing. But absolutely agree that I can't trust him in this story. 100% not. Because there are a couple of flaws to what I understand the plan to be. Or at the way. So obviously there's the whole thing of we need to get the time ship. It takes 3 people to pilot the time ship. Okay, fair enough. And he was lonely. He sent out the signal to fuck it, the Cryons were the ones that said, "Oh, quid pro quo," and like he'll take away the time ship and use it to get to his own fucking place or whatever the thing is. It's like, okay, fair enough. Like, you're only doing this because you'll get off Earth with it. Why did you need Payne and Russell and Griffiths when you had your two fucking buddies with you, who are completely subservient to you? Because if we recall back, they are fucking android duplicates of real people. So why the fuck didn't he just go with the two of them in the fucking first place? But also, I think his plan is kind of stupid, because in order to get to Talos, to get the ship, he has to give himself up to the Cybermen. But absolutely nothing would stop the Cybermen from cyberizing them right then and there in the underground. The only reason that they have to go, they are brought back to Talos, is because of the Doctor in the tunnels. That's the only thing. And the Cyber just says, let's pack up shop and go. So Litton's whole plan is incredibly fucking, from my perspective, stupid. But in terms of, again, like this redemption arc type thing, he had multiple opportunities to tell the Doctor to get out of his own fucking way and listen. And, you know, this is what I'm trying to do. Instead, he kind of just smugly kind of goes like, well, I've got one up on you because I know what's going on and you don't. And look at your chickens coming home to roost type fucking shit. And I'm like, there's even a point there where the Doctor goes, you know more than you're letting on. And he goes, all good time. It's like, dude, you're literally the fucking belly of the beast here. It's not going to work out well for you. So then when there's like, you know, at the end, like, yeah, he gets his hands crushed in that very fucking visceral scene. Very visceral scene. And then he, and then he's in the fucking thing and he's getting cyberized. It's like, no, getting cyberized is not good. So yeah, no one deserves it. But I'm not going to, I don't think I would lose that much sleep over his death, given the amount of fucking carnage and murder that he has been responsible for, even before, like, even without Resurrection of the Daleks, he has rampaged across the galaxy for hire. So yeah.
Yeah, I think like one of the things that's most interesting, and I wonder if you picked up on this, is, you know, the Doctor gives himself shit and Peri gives him shit, you know, not in a bad way, but in a sort of ill-informed way, like I said, about you never gave him a chance to explain, you just assumed the worst of him or whatever. I don't think Litton wanted the Doctor's help. I think as soon as the Doctor turned up, Litton was like, oh, interesting. And he was enjoying watching the Doctor have to face up to the results of his actions. And he was loving watching the Doctor realize, oh, we're on Telos. Oh, they're going to try and undo what happened to Mondas and all this kind of stuff. And he's fucking loving it. And it's only when he's being cyberized that he realizes, I fucked up. I was playing fucking Billy Big Bollocks when I should have been saying, hey, you know I haven't been the best guy in the past, but, you know, these people don't deserve this. So will you help me get this sorted and whatever? And I think that's the sort of tragedy of him at the end, is it's at the end he realizes that he could have teamed up with the Doctor and they could have been successful together. But because he had to be the fucking big boy and fucking, you know, show off how much he knew and relish in the Doctor sort of, like I said, the chickens coming home to roost type thing, he went through the unimaginable instead. So that's why I say that his death is kind of tragic. It's not because I have any sympathy for him whatsoever. It's tragic in the sense of it's a tragedy as a storytelling mechanic, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I get you. So now the Cybermen.
Okay, you mentioned that Litton's plan made no sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give a small spoiler. I didn't give this episode a 5.
Okay.
And one of the main reasons for that is the Cybermen. Okay?
Hmm.
Okay. The Cybermen are on Telos. X number of years after the tomb of the Cybermen, they started waking up again.
Mm-hmm.
Their hibernation ended, they started waking up again. But it wasn't working for all of them because the Creons are off being little fuckers and screwing it up. Right? So they are concerned, even though emotions are meaningless, they're concerned that there's not going to be enough of them, that they may not survive the reawakening on Talos. So their plan is to use a time ship to go back in time and stop Mondas from being destroyed. Therefore, yay, all the Cybermen. Woo!
Mm-hmm.
They have Cybermen on Earth a year before the Mondas thing was due to happen. Those Cybermen got there how?
That is a weird thing because, like, they say that they have the time ship, but Flash says that they don't know how to use it. So it's just a ship. But the way that I kind of had it in my head is that this is one of the later generations of Cybermen. Who knows? Like, well, no, they wouldn't be the same ones that were held over from the invasion because they were all destroyed. So this is probably another secret group that have come to Earth. But, like, why the fuck are they at?
Because this is the thing. The Doctor makes it very clear. The destruction of Mondas happened in 1986, which is a year
Yeah.
on from this
Mm-hmm.
story.
Mm-hmm.
Great. The Cybermen have a time ship. It's their time ship. They have one.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have the Creons saying they can't get access to the time ship. But they already have a time ship. Because it's with the time ship that they put the people on Earth in 1985, presumably to keep an eye on things and make sure that everything was going according to plan and whatever. Did they go to Earth with the time ship? If they went to Earth with the time ship, why would they bring the time ship back to tell us? This whole time ship shit makes no sense.
Like, it's the really kind of odd thing because, like, okay, the story does make a bit of sense in terms of the Cybermen going back to Earth or, like, trying to prevent the destruction of Mondas by like going, like, it's like
But, like, surely, given the way that the Creons described the timeline, so Mondas was destroyed, any remaining Cybermen ended up on Telos eventually, and they went into hibernation twice, because Troughton woke them up, and then Troughton put them back to sleep. So they've woken up twice in that time, but the way it's presented in the story suggests that what was happening on Earth is concurrent to what's happening on Telos. Because otherwise, how was Lytton communicating across time with the Creons?
yeah.
So if Mondas is destroyed in 1986, what are Cybermen doing on Telos in 1985? Unless they were a splinter group before Mondas was ever destroyed that they went to Telos, and they found out through the temporal wave that Mondas would eventually be destroyed. So now they're trying to save it in the future? Because we're told they're trying to save it in the past.
Yeah, no,
But they're actually trying to save it in the future.
No, it doesn't work because like this is like so this story takes place post two of the Cybermen, where we're told that humanity has achieved interstellar space flight at this stage. So yeah, the logistics of this don't really work out because, as you said, the original cyber controller looked vastly different. So I'm going to assume he was upgraded when he was rescued by the Cybermen of the future that arrived on Telos to try and do something. Yeah. This kind of got very convoluted.
The only thing I can think of is that there was a time ship from someone, somewhere, at some point, buried on Earth. In London, there was a time ship. The Cybermen found out about this time ship and hatched this plan where they would contact Cybermen in the past to get the time ship and bring it to the future. Meaning they can communicate through time, they just can't travel through time. In order for Mondas to not be destroyed, they need the cyber controller. It's a cyber leader won't work. They need cyber controller. So the goal was the Cybermen unearth and fix the time ship, bring it to Telos in the future to pick up the cyber controller, and then the cyber controller will lead the successful saving of Mondas. Which kind of makes sense. Except, and then you could say that like when the Cybermen go to Telos in the TARDIS, the Cybermen that were left over, they went through the original plan and they took the time ship because that's fine. Not all of them went in the TARDIS. Say there was like, John and James were left behind and John and James took the time ship, right? Or John, James and Jim took the time ship because there had to be three of them. And so that was the plan. Like, okay, well, we're going to take this fucking cool ship, but you guys, as a backup plan, still bring the original ship. We'll see you on Mondas in X whatever. That still doesn't explain one thing. How was Lytton communicating with the Creons?
Yeah.
Unless the Creons could also communicate through time. Because the way the Creons describe it is the Cybermen have discovered time travel. They cannot, but we don't want them to. It's just a whole thing, right? The Cybermen plan makes no sense.
Yeah. Like, no, I get it. It's just, the plan does make sense, but it's just badly explained and plotted out from a writing perspective.
The plan makes sense in multiple ways when you have, there is a time ship. The time ship was sent back to Earth to keep an eye on things and how they were progressing and report back to the future. The time ship would eventually be sent back to the future to pick up the cyber controller once he had awoken enough Cybermen. But how does everyone know the time ship is coming to the future and the time ship requires 3 people to travel? How did something in what's his face know about it?
Bates and Stratton. This is like the fucking Avengers Endgame explanation as to how time travel works. This is starting to hurt in my fucking head this moment. Oh God.
I will say on the Cybermen, sorry, we've gotten completely sidetracked, but this has been bothering me since last night. It's the one thing in this story where I'm like, I'm so fucking confused. Because people think, like, oh, Doctor Who is like very light on sci-fi. This is fucking confusing. I think these Cybermen are an interesting step forward and step backwards as Cybermen. I think design-wise, they're a bit of a step backwards. They're too fucking skinny. If that makes sense.
You prefer more robust, chunky.
Yeah, because I don't know, they just seem too skinny and like their stuff doesn't really fit well.
I think the thing is that like it's a weird thing, like with the advancements of stuff at the time, the quality of the costumes has actually taken a regression back.
However, what I think is really good is one of the funniest things about the Cybermen, particularly explain Revenge of the Cybermen, is this whole physical power that they use.
mhm.
So, like, there's the really funny clip in Revenge of the Cybermen where they just hold on to the Doctor and Sarah Jane's shoulders and they shake them.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, are you giving them a massage or what are you doing?
Mhm.
I think in this story, they actually show that much better. Because you have where they put their hands to the side of Griffith's head and you basically get the impression that they're going to crush his skull. They do the shoulder thing with Colin, but I think Colin sells it better than Tom and Liz did, to be honest.
Yeah.
But the big thing is when they go full whack on Litton's arms and his wrists. And you kind of go, okay, I know. They are very strong. And one of their ways of controlling you is just they can hold you and they can break your bones and, break your skin and whatever. So I think that was a really good advancement. I think the design was a bit of a regression and the plan made no fucking sense. Well, no.
Yep.
The plan made sense. The logistics of the plan made no fucking sense.
Yes. One thing I was just taking a look at there while we were chatting, I didn't realize it. It's the same cyber controller. It's the same actor from 1967. I think that's pretty cool. Just an upgraded body with a bullet head. He's got a massive bullet head in him. The other thing that I think people or writers tend to forget this, or at least directors fucking tend to forget this. Cybermen are not emotional beings. Stop giving direction to the actors to express emotion. It makes no fucking sense. Then they're not Cybermen. There's something else. There's too many times there where a Cyberman is like, huh? Like, no, everything, like, there's a thing there where they're tracking Bates and Stratton because Bates and Stratton are partially cyberized, so they're able to track their implants or whatever. And it's like, why would the supremely logical and emotionally cold and analytical Cybermen play a cat and mouse game with two fucking prisoners when they could, they send out one fucking guard to kill them? You have multiple fucking guards. Like, why? Why in the name of fucking, it's a thing that pisses me off about the later Cybermen stories, is that the Cybermen do not act as how they're meant to be, which is ruthlessly analytical, completely emotionless. There's way too many times Cybermen express emotion in the last few Cybermen stories.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will say, though, I did love the reveal that Stratton and Bates have, because you kind of got a bit of a sense of it because they have very grey skin.
Yeah.
But you don't really fully realize it until they reveal it.
Nope. Other than that, that's pretty much all I had to say about the Cybermen. Cybermen being Cybermen, doing Cybermen things.
Okay, we have come to the overall, where we discuss our thoughts on the story and give it a score out of 5.
My head.
I get to go first.
Yes, you do.
So Paddy's head can sort of relax itself a bit. I agree with what you said back when you were discussing Colin. As a performance, this is 2 for 2 for Colin. Like, I think it's really well done. I think for Nicola Bryant, I think she did really well.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just find Peri annoying, but that's just her voice. Her voice irritates me, and that just is what it is. I think I can just change that. I think our supporting cast was phenomenal. Like, the performances in this were top tier, like amazing. I think Griffiths was a great sort of, like you said, that sort of counter-human experience compared to Peri, but also a little bit of the sort of funny aspects to the story to bring a little bit of levity to it. The other supporting cast that we didn't discuss, I think, were all really good as well. I think their characters were interesting, just not interesting enough for us to really discuss because they all died quite quickly, to be honest. I think the Creons are an interesting introduction. I think the Cybermen's plan was interesting, terrifying. Just the logistics made fuck all sense to me. So overall, I think the story was really good. A couple of the meatier parts of it, for me, really is the Doctor. And the Doctor as a more aggressive figure. And what I find interesting is, so the sonic screwdriver has been out of the show for a while, right? But here the Doctor has a sonic lance that he uses the same way as a screwdriver. Like literally almost exactly the same as how they use the sonic screwdriver. But I don't know why my brain sort of was drawn to the idea that a screwdriver is a tool for fixing things, whereas a lance cuts things. So I don't know if that was intentional to sort of reflect the fact that like the Sixth Doctor is going to be more direct, is going to be more involved, is going to be not less, moral, because I think he does still have morals. But I don't know why I sort of got caught in the fact that it's a lance, not a screwdriver. I don't know if that bothers anyone else. Or that,
well, to be fair, like if we're going like technically an actual screwdriver can kill someone as well.
Yeah, sure. I think I liked the Doctor in this one. I liked where they were going with him. I think it worked quite well. I think had this been Peter's Doctor, I'd probably been quite confused as to why he's suddenly attacking people and whatever. But I think for Colin's Doctor, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's his own thing. I think there is a big difference, though, between the way Colin was here versus, say, the way John used to be. Where it was all Venusian Aikido and whatever, because no offense, right? There's a reason why he reminds me of Danger Mouse, other than the YouTube video, which is because John was so bombastic.
Yeah.
It was always kind of funny.
Yeah.
Whenever he did it. So even though he meant it in a serious way, it came across as slightly humorous. Tom tended not to be as physical in terms of a fisticuffs kind of way. He could be if he needed to be, but he tended not to be.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to show another side of the Doctor that's like, I'm not going to put up with shit. And I don't know, I'm curious to see how it progresses, but I think when people talk like, oh, the Doctor doesn't use guns or whatever, I think that's a pedestal that modern Doctor Who doubled down on way too much. I get that he can be uncomfortable with them, but this idea of like, the Doctor would never hold a gun, I'm like, that's just blatantly untrue. It's just incorrect. So what would I give this story? Like I said, it wasn't a 5. I have however given a 4 because I really thoroughly enjoyed it. The only 2 things I didn't like was I didn't think Lytton deserved any sort of redemption arc. I would have rather they picked almost any other standalone villain would have worked better for me than Lytton. Like any other sort of misguided evil scientist or whatever, almost any other one of them I would have preferred over this guy, because again, for us it wasn't that long ago that we watched Resurrection of the Daleks, and he does not deserve any sympathy. I do think his ending is tragic because it's sort of the hoisted by your own petard type thing of, had you not been such a fucking bellend and asked for help and explains the situation, this wouldn't have happened to you, fucking idiot. But I don't think he deserved a redemption arc. And the other thing that really took me out, because I spent so long trying to figure it out, is the fucking logistics of this fucking time ship. And the whole plan. If you can ignore that part and just shut your brain off to that particular piece, this episode's brilliant. It's super fun to watch. Get great character moments. The Doctor gets along really well with everybody. Peri gets along really well with everybody. There's good dynamics between all the characters. We uncover new lore. People are saying like, oh, it relies too much on the lore from the 60s and from... Oh, fuck off. Like, it's a fun show. Let it remember its history. You know? And I think this story actually does work. I don't know if Jonathan Turner intended for it to go this far. But this would be a very good introduction story for someone who's never seen Doctor Who before. To get them interested in the backstory and interested in the lore, because it introduces Totter's Lane, it explains the chameleon circuit and the fact that it hasn't been working along explaining why the TARDIS looks like a police box. It explains about the Time Lords, where they're from, what they do, the fact that they regenerate. That's all explained. It explains one of the big bads in terms of the Cybermen. The Daleks get name dropped. And it reminds you that this show has been going successfully for, at this point, 22 years. And I think as an introductory story to sort of say, hey, I wanted to watch a story in a show. It's going to be from 22 years into the show. It's going to show you what this show is made of. I think it does really well doing that. I think calling back to yesteryear and trying to reconcile 50 million different canon divergence for the Cybermen was a really interesting choice. I really, really liked it. So yeah, I gave it a 4.
Okay. Now, before I go into my thoughts, I want to talk to you about the level of violence in the show. And no, you and I have had interesting discussions surrounding the level of violence portrayed in the show. Like, Brain of Morbius springs to mind, Resurrection of the Daleks springs to mind, and here we have one that is quite visceral in its violence as well. So just for a recap for some people, we do have the Doctor being a bit more aggressive. He dives into the tunnel to fight that guy. Now, the fight is off screen, but it's the way that he dives in the tunnel. When Griffiths shoots at the Cybermen, there's lots of spurts of green blood. When Russell kills the Cyberman in the TARDIS, he actually puts his gun into its mouth and blows its head off. And then there's the scene when Lytton repeatedly stabs the cyber controller. There's more spurts of green blood. Then the Doctor again blows a couple of Cybermen's body parts off. So, for you, what was your take on the level of violence portrayed in the story?
It didn't bother me as much.
Towards it.
It didn't bother me as much as Resurrection of the Daleks.
Okay.
I think the violence in this is going to sound very weird. It made logical sense for it to be there.
And like, that's the thing that, because I wanted to get your thoughts on it, because you have always said a place for everything and everything in its place. And that extends to, because like I always find it kind of very interesting talking our shared interests. I love horror. You're not really big into horror, but you will gladly sit down and watch the Alien franchise or something which is kind of visceral in certain parts. But then again, as I said, it's the everything in its place when it suits it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like I wanted to talk to you about this because Resurrection happens in Peter's run, and you don't particularly like Peter's run, whereas you seem to be liking Colin's run. And I'm just wondering, did that potentially color your acceptance of the violence in this story?
It possibly did, I'm not going to lie. I'm human, and therefore I have differing opinions on things. I think the difference for me with this one is a lot of the violence, a lot of the visceral violence is against cybernetic beings. And Birdman, the way the Cybermen are presented now, compared to, say, in 10th Planet, we don't really get presented with our human side, right? So it's a little bit easier for you to sort of go along with it.
Yeah.
Like lopping their heads off and whatever. There's no blood. There's no nothing. The fact that even like when Little attacks the cyber controller, it's green oil that comes out. It's not red blood. I think had it been red blood, I think that would have been amazing in terms of impact, but also probably a bit too much. And I think as well, I think this is going to be weird, is the fact the Doctor just doesn't just let it happen. He's not watching on the sidelines as people are being knocked off left, right, and center. And I think that's believable with Colin. Whereas, I mean, because I think if I remember correctly, in Resurrection of the Daleks, Peter did have a weapon at one point.
He did. He has a pistol and he uses it to shoot the Dalek mutant. Like their ship, where he leans into the shots.
Yeah. But that's the only time. Like, he doesn't participate in the big battle at the end. He lets them all kill each other.
He does throw out the grenades that have the mutagen in them that causes all the Daleks in the casings to,
Yeah. Maybe. So yeah, it just works better in this story, in my opinion. I don't know why.
No. Like I see. This is the thing that was at as you know, like I've always I haven't had any qualms about the level of action and violence within Doctor Who. Like, so it's when I see it, I'm not overly surprised.
I think the big thing that was quite visceral in Resurrection was, again, I mentioned it earlier, shooting a random fisherman halfway down a beach.
Yeah.
We don't get that here.
No. And
we have primarily two species, so the Kryons and the Cybermen, and then the Cybermen and their slaves participating in attacks against each other.
Yeah, I know, I agree that it works better here because Colin's Doctor makes the violence feel less alien. No. So Paddy personally doesn't mind it. Like, never have, don't think I ever will. In terms of other people that are not as okay with it, I do agree that it fits better here because Colin's Doctor, his persona and his presence in the story, it makes it seem that it kind of is understandable and justifiable in a way, like the presentation side of things. But anyway, back to my thing. So, I really enjoyed the story as well. I really did. Again, another one where I did the rewatch after I did my story recaps, and I found it flowed actually quite fast. Like the 245 minutes, as I said, it works quite well. But this is the real test for the character because the Doctor is a bit more grounded. He's a bit more established in terms of his persona, and it's the real test of the Doctor Peri dynamic. Because it's no longer he's still trying to find himself. The dynamic is pretty much established. And I actually think that works quite well. They do bounce off each other really well. And I'm glad that Colin took Nicola out for that dinner so that they could get past that awkward biting on a bum thing and establish a really good rapport here. So performance-wise, absolutely, completely agree with you. Look, Brian Glover is another person that I was sucker for. I fucking love the man. And I was like, even if it's just a passing comment, I want to talk about him because I thought he was really good in this. Couple of convoluted plot points, though. One, why did Listen automatically assume it was the Doctor when he saw the sonic lance? Why? Where was the justification that it was automatically always him? Again, the supremely logical and emotionless Cybermen playing cat and mouse with the two boys. The weird name drop of the Time Lord is manipulating the Doctor to do their job. I'm like, okay, that seems very like it might be a recurrent theme throughout the rest of the season. I don't know. It might be building up to something. If it doesn't, it's just a random fucking throwaway thing. It's kind of like strange that like at least you might have a Time Lord present themselves to say, "Well done, we fooled you again, Lord President," because he's technically still Lord President at this point, I believe. But the important thing about when we review these stories is, regardless of all the fucking stupidity and like nonsensical plot elements and whatever, did we enjoy it? I enjoyed the story quite a lot. Really quite a lot. And I agree that Lytton is not a character that deserves to have his redemption arc, because no. I believe it was James A. Caster, the comedians, was talking about Piers Morgan, was basically saying you don't get to be Lex Luthor and then stop being Lex Luthor and help a woman across the road, and then they're like, "Oh, well done, you're the perfect hero now," type thing. So yeah, no, he's still responsible for this absolutely fucking horrendous thing, or these actions that he did throughout his entire life. And just because he enters into a quid pro quo agreement with someone doesn't negate any of that fucking shit. And he doesn't help himself in every regard. Like, this isn't a Magneto redemption arc. It's not. So fuck him in that regards. And plus, you got decent men. Well, not decent, but you got innocent. They didn't need to die. Yeah, I was like, they didn't need to die. But yeah, I'm going to agree with you. This is a 4 out of 5. It's fun, and this is a really good introduction into Collins to run of things. And I think, like, I kind of want to echo the point again, is that Peri is really establishing herself as a companion that I quite like. I don't envision her cracking top 5, possibly top 10, because I think she's had a very good run of things, a very good presentation of things, and I pray to fucking God that the writers keep up that presentation of the character.
Yeah. Interesting observation for you. Mm-hmm. The last time we gave a season opener a 4 or higher was season 16's The Ribos Operation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because what have been the season openers since then? So we've had
Destiny of the Daleks, which we both give a 1. The Leisure Hive, 1.75 for you, 1.5 for me. Castrovalva came close, 3.5 for both. Arc of Infinity, 2.5 for you, 3 for me. The Five Doctors doesn't count as an opener, but that was 2.5. Then Warriors of the Deep was 1 for you and 1.5 for me. So I think from that perspective, this is a very strong opening for Colin.
Yeah.
And particularly because you and I both, we didn't think it was perfect, but we relatively enjoyed last week's episode as well. Or last episode as well. Which I think is very interesting. Something that just occurred to me. It's not at the same level, right? But I'm going to say it in case our friend Vicky ever listens to this, because she'll just message me and be like, "You're such an asshole." In a very, very mild way, and this is nothing against the actor, because he's lovely. The way I feel about Lytton getting a redemption arc is very similar to the way I felt about Shaw getting a redemption arc in season 3 of Star Trek Picard.
I was wondering where you were going with this, because I'm like, how the fuck are you going to tie this to Caves of Androzani?
No. It's not the same. I will say Shaw was arguably less villainous. He was just a douchebag or a dipshit from Detroit, depending on how you want to say it. But my reaction to Lytton's death scene was very similar to my reaction to Shaw's.
Oh dear, how sad.
Yeah, where it's like, Doctor, don't cry over this man. 7, don't waste your time, love.
Yeah.
He was a dick to you the entire time you've known him.
Oh, douchebag saving the day.
That is a conversation for another day,
Yes, it is.
and a conversation I've had with the actor who played Shaw, because he firmly believes his character was all in the right. I firmly disagree.
Yeah.
But back to Doctor Who.
And that's why he'll never speak to you again.
Unless I give him money to do so.
Yes.
I think we're done. Because
I think we are.
we're talking shite now.
Yeah, pretty much we are. But that's a stock and trade. But yes, no, really good story. Really good continuation in terms of the characters from last week. And I'm looking forward to next time where we discuss The Vengeance on Varos.
Ooh. I have fuck all idea what that's about. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Till then, guys. Bye.